Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review, we took a look at the Google Pixel 5, Google's latest flagship smartphone that, despite not having flagship specs, still holds its own with very good performance. The Pixel 5 is Google's flagship phone for 2020, although you could argue that it's not really a flagship phone compared to other flagships. That's largely because the specs are not going to match up. So here you have a Snapdragon 765G processor, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage. Not bad, but not necessarily up there with all the others. But that's kind of the point. So Google figures that it can make a phone that almost plays big without necessarily being big. And even though there's a 6-inch OLED display on here, the phone actually feels really wieldy. I mean, this is probably the best one-handed phone I've seen as far as having a big screen for pixels, because this is the only size that the 5 comes in. Unlike previous years, the Pixel 5 does not come in an XL version. My review unit was just black, so it's not necessarily as good as the Sword of Sage variant that's out there, which is, I think, a lot nicer as far as colors go. But one of the things that I liked about the design treatment is the aluminum back and the fingerprint sensor. So, well, I guess that's two things. But basically here, it's a really nice touch. And even though I have a case on my phone, the fingerprint sensor has always been one of my favorite things on Pixel phones. And it wasn't there on the 4, but it is back on the 5. And it's a really good way to get past the lock screen with just a simple tap in the back. So Google figured, okay, we're not going to go with the fingerprint sensor on the screen. We'll just go with an actual physical one here. The front-facing camera is put all the way to the corner of the left. So you can see that Google's figured out, okay, we're just going to make use of the screen real estate that we have here and really cut down on the bezels. So even though this is a larger screen, the phone actually feels smaller than previous years do. Despite the fact that it is an aluminum back, Google cut enough of the back to make wireless charging possible. So it's a very nice feature to have. Also, new features, generally speaking, here are not in abundance. In fact, some of what's here is probably going to be applied to other Pixel models. For example, the Hold for Me, which right now is something that the 5 only has, is where Google Assistant will kind of just, hold on for, like, you're put on hold on a call. It'll just stay there and it'll tell you when a person's actually ready to talk to you. The Recorder app, this is one of the best features that came out in the Pixel 4, and now with the 5, one of the cool things about it is that not only do you get the transcription when you're actually recording somebody talking, but you can edit the text right then and there too. A feature that I really wish would have been there initially, but it's there now. It's very, very cool. Of course, being a Pixel phone, the camera is going to play a pretty prominent role as to how good it is. You're going to get great shots of this. There's no question about it. It's still a fantastic camera. Google's computational software is really second to none. So the thing is, though, is that they made some changes and then didn't make some changes that also have an impact. So I'll explain. First and foremost is the fact that the telephoto lens has been replaced by an ultra-wide lens. We wanted the ultra-wide lens, or at least a lot of people did, and unfortunately it's come at the expense of the telephoto lens. So why Google couldn't just put all 3 lenses in there, I'm not sure, but they didn't. So you're getting a 16 megapixel ultra-wide lens and camera, which shoots really, really well under the circumstances. Again, it's not going to shoot every photo really, really well, like in certain conditions at night. Now, night sight is available, but night sight works a little differently on the ultra-wide than it does on the standard lens. So you have a little bit more leeway with it. I think a lot of that has to do with because you have a wider aperture with the standard lens as opposed to the ultra-wide. But in any case, the photos will turn out pretty well, and especially in good lighting. They turn out well too because you also make use of the shadow and highlighting sliders. So night sight also applies to the portrait mode. So here now, when you're taking portrait shots in the dark at night, the night sight kicks in. In fact, night sight can even kick in automatically when you're just shooting with the regular camera mode too. You can turn that off. You'll notice that there's the A and the moon icon on screen. You turn that off and then it doesn't kick in in those points. It won't kick in during the day, obviously. It'll only kick in when it knows and it sees that light's lower or it's dimmer. But in any case, it's there. So even if you're not looking to use night sight or you forget, at least the mode is there and it'll kick in when it thinks it should. That being said, as good as the photos are, they're not as good as I think they could have been, in the sense that I really wonder what Google could do if you combine its software with a larger image sensor. We've already been seeing this from competitors, and it does pay dividends for the most part, but not everybody gets the software part right. So here we have a situation where the software is really, really good, but unfortunately the image sensors are not as big. So I hope that Google really, with the Pixel 6 or whatever they're going to call the next one, really do something about that and just take the camera hardware to another level, because frankly, the sensor that's in here for the main standard camera is the same sensor that was used in the Pixel 4, and actually the same one used in the Pixel 4a as well. So nothing too unfamiliar there. Video. Okay, now video I think has been something that's been neglected in Pixel phones for some time, and at least Google took it more seriously this time. So there is 3 modes that stand out: active, locked, and cinematic pan, to give you a little bit more control and some, little cinematography also in the way that you shoot video. But generally speaking, video is a little better. I just found it a little more stabilized, a little better with color. Of course, you have to adjust the shadows and highlights. It has a tendency sometimes to overexpose images when you're actually shooting, like when you actually lock onto something. But in any case, it's there. And so at least it's an improvement. You can shoot in 4K or 1080p. So you have that. So no 8K shooting here. And also you can zoom in on the audio. So if somebody's talking and you want to zoom in on something that they're saying, you can do that. And that's it. Another key thing that was addressed here by Google was the battery life. Now the Pixel 4 just wasn't good at that. There's no other way to put it. Here it's far better. Of course, the battery's a lot bigger, so that's going to help. But even the 90 hertz refresh rate on the screen, I didn't mention that earlier, but that's another great feature. It's a variable refresh rate that comes in, so it kicks in when it needs to. Normally those are battery drainers too, but even with that, the battery lasted far longer than the Pixel 4 did. I went through a day really without any problem. Most of the time I would recharge at night, but still, I never really worried about whether I was going to get through a full day. And that's with mixed and moderate usage, a combination of video streaming and photos and whatnot. I mean, photo editing, you name it. It held up quite well. So that was impressive. I was hoping that Google would actually finally address the battery issue. It seems like they have. Just a quick summary. I mean, overall, the phone, you're getting stock Android. The software experience is fantastic. It's really snappy. I like the haptic feedback as well. It's always been really good on the Pixels. And just generally, I think you'll find this a very smooth device. Granted, some of the features that are in here, you're gonna find in the 4A anyway, which is considerably cheaper. So it's not like you have to go with the 5 if you want a Pixel. You could get the 4A. Most of the features that are in here are probably gonna end up in the 4A anyway, so you don't necessarily have to get the 5 if you're looking for a Pixel. The 4A's been a very, very good phone so far. You're not gonna get the ultra-wide lens. You're not necessarily gonna get all of the hardware specs, I guess, but in the end, they're actually pretty similar to each other in a lot of ways. So, which makes me kind of wonder if Google could have gone a little further here, but I guess this is partly a price point play. And so they kept it under $1,000 and they made a damn good phone with it. You have pretty much the trappings you'd expect from a Pixel phone. And even if you've never used a Pixel phone before, I think you'll take to it pretty quickly because it just feels smooth. Right? Like there are not a lot of bells and whistles here. There isn't, anything that's really going to be complicated. It just seems to work. And apps look pretty good on it too. I just love the screen. I think the screen is beautiful. It looks great. It's responsive. The haptic feedback is nice. And you can run a bunch of different apps on here and not really worry too much, even though the processor is not necessarily top of the line. So I didn't have any issue using this. This has been my daily driver and it's been working really, really well. And I'm sure it will keep working well even for you if you want it. And that's my review of the Google Pixel 5 for the Best Buy blog. I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.